NFT, Memecoins, and digital garbage. How to sell nothing for millions. There is an old principle in economics that value derives from scarcity, utility, or labor. A diamond is scarce. Wheat is useful. A house required labor to build. But your era has discovered something far more profitable. The ability to sell things that possess none of these qualities, yet command prices that would make Renaissance merchants weep with envy. NFTs, non-fungible tokens sold for tens of millions. Memecoins with no purpose, no product, no promise beyond a dog's face, reached market capitalizations in the billions. Digital art that anyone could screenshot sold for more than physical Picassos. And the most fascinating part? The buyers knew this. They understood on some level that they were purchasing air. Yet they bought anyway, because in the modern economy, belief has become more valuable than substance. Let me take you back, because this story is not new. It is merely wearing different clothes. In 1637 in the Netherlands, a single tulip bulb sold for the price of a grand Amsterdam house. Tulips. Flowers that bloom for a week and then die. But for a brief, glorious moment, the Dutch convinced themselves that tulips were not flowers. They were investments, status symbols, tickets to wealth. The market collapsed, fortunes evaporated, and history recorded it as tulip mania, one of the first speculative bubbles ever documented. People laugh at the Dutch now, but your generation did the same thing with cartoon apes. In 2021, Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs sold for hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars. A picture of a disinterested primate wearing a hat. You could right-click, save the image, and own an identical copy for free. Yet people paid fortunes not for the image, but for the token. A digital certificate saying, "I own this." Ownership without exclusivity. Scarcity without rarity. It was brilliant in a way. Someone realized that humans don't buy things for what they are. They buy things for what owning them says about them. The tulip buyer wasn't buying a flower. He was buying proof that he was wealthy, connected, early to the trend. The NFT buyer wasn't buying art. He was buying proof that he understood the future, that he was part of the club, that he had status in a world where status is measured in wallet addresses. The mechanics are identical. The century is irrelevant. Then came Memecoins. Dogecoin started as a joke in 2013, literally a parody of Bitcoin featuring a Shiba Inu dog and broken English. No white paper promising innovation, no technology solving problems, just a meme. And yet, by 2021, Dogecoin reached a market cap of $88 billion. $88 billion for a joke. Shiba Inu coin followed, another dog-themed token with no utility, and it peaked at $41 billion. Then came Pepe, Floki, SafeMoon, Elon's sperm. Yes, that existed, each more absurd than the last, and each found millions of buyers willing to gamble that someone else would pay more. This is not investing. This is not even speculation in the traditional sense. It is a game of musical chairs where everyone knows there are no chairs, but they believe they'll hear the music stop before everyone else does. The greater fool theory perfected. You don't need to believe the asset has value. You only need to believe someone stupider than you will buy it at a higher price. And in a world of infinite connectivity, there are always more fools logging on. But let's talk numbers, because the scale is staggering. OpenSea, the largest NFT marketplace, processed over $20 billion in trading volume in 2021 alone. The entire NFT market hit $40 billion that year. CryptoPunks, pixelated images that look like they were drawn in Microsoft Paint in 1997, sold for millions each. One pixel art alien sold for $11.8 million. An NFT of a rock, not a clever rock, not a rare rock, just a grey clip art rock, sold for $1.3 million. The artist Beeple sold a digital collage for $69 million at Christie's, one of the most prestigious auction houses in the world, which gave the entire phenomenon institutional legitimacy. Suddenly, NFTs weren't just internet nonsense. They were art with a capital A. And when institutions validate something, the herd follows. The psychology here is ancient. Humans are social creatures who measure worth by consensus. If enough people say something is valuable, it becomes valuable, at least temporarily. This is why currency works, why gold works, why even government bonds work. But the difference is that currencies and bonds have mechanisms, institutions, and enforcement behind them. NFTs and Memecoins have only hype, and hype evaporates the moment attention shifts, and shift it did. By 2022, the NFT market collapsed by over 90%. Trading volumes on OpenSea dropped from billions to millions. Bored apes that sold for $300,000 were suddenly worth $30,000 if you could find a buyer at all. Memecoins followed the same trajectory. Shiba Inu lost over 80% of its value. Dogecoin crashed from 70 cents to 6 cents, and thousands of smaller coins simply disappeared, their developers vanishing with whatever liquidity remained. The people who bought at the top, convinced they were early, that this was the future, that they understood something the old world didn't, learned the same lesson the Dutch learned in 1637. When everyone believes in nothing, nothing is what everyone ends up with. But here's the twist, and this is what makes your era so peculiar. Some people made fortunes. The creators of Bored Ape Yacht Club made hundreds of millions. Early Dogecoin buyers who sold near the top turned thousands into millions. NFT platforms collected fees on every transaction. Crypto exchanges made billions in trading commissions. The people selling the shovels during the gold rush got rich. The miners mostly went broke. And this creates a narrative problem, because every bubble produces a handful of winners who become legends, and their success convinces the next wave of buyers that they too can be early, that they too can time it perfectly. Survivorship bias turns disasters into inspiration. Now, let's address the argument defenders make. But NFTs prove ownership on the blockchain. They're revolutionizing art, gaming, identity. Ownership of what exactly? You don't own the copyright. You don't own the image itself. You own a token pointing to a URL that could go offline tomorrow. You own a receipt, not the thing. As for revolutionizing art, art has always been about scarcity and status. The Mona Lisa is valuable not only because Da Vinci painted it, but because only one exists and it hangs in the Louvre. An NFT has no such constraint. Anyone can mint infinite copies on different blockchains. The scarcity is artificial, enforced only by collective agreement not to acknowledge copies. That is not revolution, that is rebranding. And Memecoins? Defenders claim they're community-driven and decentralized. True, they're also worthless. A decentralized worthless thing is still worthless. Community consensus doesn't create value. It creates agreement about price, which is not the same thing. The tulip buyers had community consensus too. It didn't save them. Yet I don't write this to mock the buyers, because ridicule misses the point. These people weren't stupid, they were human. Humans are wired to follow trends, fear missing out, trust crowds, and believe in stories. The story of NFTs and Memecoins was seductive. Get rich quickly, be part of history, escape the traditional system, own the future. It's the same story every bubble tells, from railroads in the 1840s to dot-com stocks in 1999. The narrative changes, the psychology doesn't. What makes digital bubbles different is speed. In 1637, tulip mania took years to build and collapse. The South Sea bubble took a decade. The 2008 housing crisis took 5 years. NFTs and Memecoins went from zero to billions to near zero in under 2 years. Information moves faster. Hype spreads faster. Collapse happens faster. Your world runs on acceleration, and that includes the speed at which people lose money. So, what is the lesson here? That speculation is eternal. That humans will always find new ways to gamble and call it investing. That in every era, someone discovers a way to sell nothing and convince others it's worth something. The product changes. Tulips, railroads, dot-coms, housing, NFTs, but the pattern never does. Prices rise beyond reason. Skeptics are mocked as outdated. Euphoria peaks, reality returns, prices collapse, and everyone swears they've learned their lesson. Until the next time, because there is always a next time. Already, new trends are forming. AI-generated art, tokenized real-world assets, the metaverse, if anyone still remembers that word. Crypto is not dead. It's resting, waiting for the next narrative to go viral. And when it does, a new generation will buy in, convinced this time is different, that the old rules don't apply, that they've discovered something the world hasn't priced in yet. And perhaps, in some small cases, they'll be right. But most will learn what the Dutch learned, what the dot-com investors learned, what the NFT buyers learned, that the cost of belief is proportional to the distance between price and value. The further they drift apart, the more expensive the lesson becomes. Welcome to my channel. Here, we examine the mechanics of human behavior in markets, the patterns, the psychology, the stories we tell ourselves to justify decisions we know are irrational. Because once you understand that speculation is not about assets, but about emotions, you stop asking, "What is this worth?" and start asking, "What do people believe it's worth?" And in that gap between belief and reality, fortunes are made and lost every single day.